event of a financial meltdown or any type of economic disaster, borders contain that disaster to that specific nation. And when you eliminate all borders, how do you contain things? You don't. I'm 16th generation Canadian. And you know what? I love our neighbors to the south. I really do. And I'd like them to remain our neighbors to the south.
We have more control of our own destiny when we're not worrying about the other factors, the other people in our union. So if you're worrying about the Mexicans, what they might hold important, we may not. So I think we can get along with them and do business with them, but I think it's better to do it as an individual rather than as separate or as a union together. That's my personal opinion.
It's almost inevitable, I would say, that happening.
Why do you think it's inevitable?
Everybody's becoming more interconnected these days, I think.
I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Concerned.
You're concerned about the future?
Definitely.
Yeah, no, me too. Yeah, me too.
The North American Union is an idea essentially put forth by the Council on Foreign Relations. They wrote a document called Building a North American Community, and they're a think tank of about 2,000 or 3,000 of the business and political elite in the United States who have common interests. Those common interests aren't really defined much to the public, but you can go to CFR.org to see the CFR's own website. You can do your own primary source research by going to their website, looking at their publications, and seeing what their members decide would be a good idea to see. Now, they don't have any official political power, though a lot of their members are politicians. So what they do is they are a think tank of the business and political elite who come up with plans that the government adopts without the say of the rest of the public.
Up until about 6 years ago, we never saw in major U.S. papers or Canadian papers, never a mention of Bilderberg. Now it's finally all over the place. Europe, it's all over the place. What is that a sign of? What is that a sign of that this is happening?
It's a sign that an independent press is growing. What I don't know is, are enough of the public listening? That's my great prayer, is that enough of the public are listening. Because you can keep telling them, I can keep telling them, but is there enough of the public going to listen against the tidal wave of trash media? You know, all the cheap thrill stuff, all the commercial stuff. Are people really going to learn what's going on? Because what is happening to the United States, to Canada, to Mexico is terrible, terrible, terrible stuff.
Can you talk about the American Union? I mean, the CFR writes the white papers for their agenda. They carry out Bilderberg's orders. That's on record. And even Lou Dobbs on CNN saying, American Union, end of Canada, end of U.S. They are actually, through the trade deals, already starting to bleed us.
Well, I breezed through what in Canada we've referred to as the Manley Report. John Manley was a previous Deputy Prime Minister, and he sat on a Council of Foreign Relations committee with Mexicans and Americans. And it started off by saying, does it not make sense that Canada and the U.S. should be one, that we should have a common currency? Does it not just make enormous sense that we should have a common border? To ask the question is to answer it. Now, that was right in the report. I know they're just waiting for us to look the other way so they can whisk it through.
They're upset about the fact that they're being exposed.
Well, I'm sure they are. I mean, look at the tinted windows. They don't want to be seen. They don't want even anybody to know they're here. So I'm sure they're ticked, you know, and that's why we're here to try to expose them.
The American Union is happening through trade deals. Just like the Euro back in the 50s when they first set it up was this economic community or this trade bloc. Now it's the Euro, and now they're taking people's right to vote, taking their sovereignty, giving it to these supranational organizations. So we're talking about the death of Canada is what's happening in there right now. The death of your sovereignty is happening in there right now. CNN has even reported that these individuals have put out the policy reports through the Council on Foreign Relations that writes their scholarly white papers to end the United States, to end Canada, and to end Mexico.
What is biometric identification, and how would this be applied in North America?
Well, biometric identification is using the characteristics which are unique to each individual as a means of identifying who they are. And we currently use it between Canada and the United States as part of the Nexus program, where we have iris scan identification. So at airports, if you're a holder of a Nexus card, you can go and put your eye in front of a machine and it reads your iris and it spits out a card saying who you are. And you can use that with your customs declaration form. So it's just a means of certain identification. There are different ways of doing that, but that's an example of one.
That was kind of the thing that people mentioned. They said that, you know, this is one more step towards an Orwellian state of everyone being on a database or something like that.
I've got news for them. They are already on a database.
Oh, really?
They are.
Which database?
Well, have they got a credit card?
Yeah.
Well, they're on a database. What are you most concerned about? Identity theft, or the fact that you might be on a database when you're already on a database? I think, quite frankly, your privacy is more likely to be breached by virtue of the information you supply credit card companies in order to acquire credit than by any linkage of your information to your biometrics. At least you know where you've got biometric identification, identity theft becomes almost impossible. And increasingly, for many people, identity theft is a nightmare. Once it happens to you, you never want it to happen again. So in a modern world, you know, every technology has its upsides and its downsides, and for some of the benefits, sometimes there are some compromises.
What are some of the lessons that we can learn from the old world order for the new world order?
Well, I think the first and most important lesson is that if we want to build a community of nations in North America that goes beyond just enlarging the market, that we have to give serious thought to what our vision of the future is. And more importantly, how all three countries that are quite independent and sovereign ought to relate to each other in a modern 21st century world. Our economies now are very integrated. Our societies are growing increasingly integrated. What's needed now is a North American idea for all three. An idea that not only defines our shared history, but a shared destiny. If we are to progress together and collaborate in a new way, it's also important for us to develop a sense of being something larger, a sense of being part of North America. Right now at the elementary school level, we by and large learn about our country and about how we differ from our neighbors and the rest of the world. I think it's time now to also learn, in addition to how we differ, what we share in common. And what North America is as a whole. It's more than just a geographical expression. I think that students should have a mandatory part of their curriculum that not only teaches them about their country, but also about their country's place in North America. I think from the elementary school level, the secondary, the university level, you can develop on that foundation a great deal more knowledge about what we have in common, about the problems that we share, about strategies for addressing those problems. And so right through university, we should have centers on North American studies that research and examine these questions and help all of our peoples know more about each other than they currently do.
Frankly, Mr. Ambassador, we lack the trained men who would be able to plan and implement operations in an area we think is vitally important. Because of this, we are also requesting that your team of advisors include a senior officer who is thoroughly experienced in psychological operations.
Very well, sir. I think we can provide you with an expert on the subject.
He is concerned with its people, their way of life, their religion, their culture, their sense of national identity, or lack of it. He must know the people of Hostland, for their minds will be his primary objective.